So for junior high, I went to Valley Oak, even though I was supposed to go to Green Acres because that's the junior high my elementary school was supposed to go to. So I went to Valley Oak because my mom teaches English there, and I didn't know anyone there. So just like any new kid, I wanted to make friends. And about 3 days in my English class, I met this kid named Clay, and I started hanging out with him and doing the things that he did, and just hanging out, and I started hanging out with his friends too. And one of the things that we did was bully this kid named Travis. And I'm not the kind of guy who bullies people or can bully people. I used to be the kid who was bullied. But my new group of friends, they could bully people, so that's what I did. I changed the kind of person I was just to fit in. I did anything it took to fit in with my new group of friends. Why do you think we want to fit in so bad that we're willing to change who we are just to fit in? Probably because it makes us feel accepted and secure, even if it makes someone else feel insecure and alienated. Sometimes when we look for ways to fit in, we look for ways other people don't fit in. We start seeing ourselves as better or more deserving than other people. This kind of attitude is most obvious in cliques and stuff, but that's not the only place where it happens. And junior high, high school, college, those aren't the only times in our life where we want to be accepted, and all we want is for someone to look at us and say, hey, I saw what you have, I saw what you just did. You have exactly what it takes to be in my group. Everywhere you look, at any age, any group, any place, you're going to find groups of people that accept people and reject others. Finding a group to fit into can get exhausting, because if you get rejected enough or turned down enough times, you might start thinking that maybe it's not that you can't find a group, maybe it's that there's something wrong with you. You might start thinking that it's not that you can't fit in, it's that it's the way you dress, or the way you look, or the way you act, or the way you talk, or just the way you are, period. What if the people who are what if the people who are determining who's in and who's out have got it all wrong? And in turn, we've been labeling the wrong people and the wrong things as important, or better, or cooler. We've decided with our own made-up rules who matters and who doesn't. And it really shouldn't, we shouldn't have those things matter. So last week, we started reading the book of Mark. And first thing Mark did was to make sure that he didn't say anything about Jesus being a baby. Because, he made sure he didn't say anything about Jesus' birth. He started talking when Jesus was an adult, when he started preaching, when he started his public ministry. And one of the things Jesus said was to repent, to turn away from life, to turn away from the way life is. Jesus was offering a new way of living. Because if Jesus was offering a different way of living, maybe the way we're living now is all wrong. So what can we do about that? If we're going to trade, what do we have to leave behind, and what do we have to embrace? Jesus came to change what we think. He came to change everything about the way we live. Back 2,000 years, they also had groups like cliques. They probably weren't called cliques because they didn't have that word back then, but it was the same idea. They had their own made-up rules that said who was in and who was out, but it was more strict and more obvious. Religious people, religion was the most strict about it too. They were blatantly obvious about who was in and who was out. The rich people, healthy people, and popular people were in. The poor, the sick, and the outcasts were out. You can probably imagine that when Jesus came and started talking about trading life, the current way of life, for something better, everyone started listening. The outsiders started thinking, wait a second. Are you saying that I don't have to be an outsider anymore? Are you saying that I can change the way I live and be accepted in the church? But on the other hand, there's people who are already in. And they started saying, hold on, Jesus. What are you trying to say? What's wrong with the way I'm living? Why can't I continue to be better than these people, or better than the poor people, or more important? The truth is, anyone can go around saying that they're different or better, but it takes a different person altogether to start living differently. to actually start behaving differently, to change the way they live. So the verse we're going to read today is in Mark 5. And it's not about just one miracle or one healing or one encounter with Jesus. It's about two stories that overlap and intertwine. You've probably heard this story before. It starts with Jesus being swarmed by a crowd, because wherever Jesus went, people followed him because they heard of the miracles he was doing, and they wanted to experience all the stuff that he was preaching about and stuff. So the first verse is Mark 5:22 through 24, and it's, "Then one of the synagogue rulers named Jairus came there. Seeing Jesus, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him. 'My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live.' So Jesus went with him." But Jesus stops talking about the little girl and starts up the second story, like in the middle of the verse. "And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak." Mark's book, Mark 5, is small. It's only like a page in my Bible. So when he puts details in there, he puts them in there for a reason. So, what's his point in this? We know Jesus is about to encounter a woman. And that's one strike against her, because in first century Judaism, women, poor people, and sick people were low in society. And women weren't really supposed to interact with men in public. So it's a big deal, not only because she interacts with him, but because she touches him. She had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, something that would have made her not able to go to any church service for like the whole time. And also, so that's one strike. She's a woman, she's impure, and it said that she had spent all of her money on doctors trying to get better, but it didn't help. So she's a woman, she's impure, and now she's poor. Even with the three things against her that would have kept her from any church or any religious leader, she goes to Jesus in hopes that he'll have a miracle. But what about Jairus? He was a man, he was a religious leader, he wasn't rich but he wasn't poor, and he approached Jesus in the right way. He didn't sneak through a crowd to get to Jesus. He got on his knees and begged him, like it was supposed to be done. But Jesus didn't care what was supposed to be done. He stops and he heals the woman who he should have said, she can wait. I'm going to go help the person who is higher up on the pecking list. And so Jesus doesn't care about what was supposed to be done. He saves the woman. But while Jesus is saving her, the little girl dies. In the time it took him to save this poor and sick woman, the little girl didn't make it. So a couple guys came from Jairus' house to tell him that his daughter died. And Jesus turns to him and says, ignoring what they said, Jesus told the synagogue ruler, "Don't be afraid, just believe." So then Jesus takes Peter, James, and John and goes to Jairus' house. Even though the little girl's dead, he goes anyways. And then he writes, "He took her by the hand and said to her, 'Talitha kum,' which means, 'Little girl, I say to you, get up.' Immediately the girl stood up and walked around. She was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished." So it sounds like this should be the happy ending, right? Everyone's healed, everyone's happy, everyone gets what they want. But what if the story wasn't about healing? What if Mark didn't write it to focus on just the healing? I mean, everyone knew they were going to be healed. Come on, it was Jesus. He was going to heal them both. Healing was something he did to fix what was physically broken, not what was broken inside. Jesus didn't come to solve physical problems, but they do matter. I mean, seriously, a woman healed from 12 years of bleeding and a girl brought back from the dead, those are pretty big deals. But what if he didn't write it to focus on the miracles, to revolve around the miracles? What if he wrote it to focus on the beautiful trade Jesus participated in? He chose a lonely woman over a synagogue ruler's daughter. He chose poverty over wealth. He chose what was needed over what was expected of him. Yeah, he healed them both, but he did it in a way to make sure that the people in the crowd and the people reading it 2,000 years afterwards would catch the significance of what he did. The people you thought didn't matter, the ones you thought were meaningless and worthless, are actually cherished and loved and chosen. No one is excluded. No one is kept out. When Jesus came to earth, he saw a broken system and a broken faith. A faith that God had put in us to care about the most broken in society. And he watched it change into a selfish thing that when people lifted themselves up and condemned others to darkness. Jesus saw it and said, no more. I'm changing everything. This is a new group, and it has to do with me. The people who are out are now in. The ones who are in are now out. It doesn't matter what you believe. It matters what you do. I'm widening the circle. Outcasts are in. The poor are in. The diseased are in. The hurt, the broken, and the overlooked are all in. But what does this mean in our lives? It means we need to stop looking at things the way they are and start looking at them the way they should be, with no boundaries and no determining inclusion or exclusion of anyone. It might not be on purpose, and it might not be as obvious as it was back then, but every day we live in ways that we include people and exclude others. And when we judge people, we take away their humanity and turn them into an object. And when we do that, we lose sight of the one thing Jesus told us to do, and that's to love one another, to care about everyone. It might be more comfortable to live life with barriers, there's the in people and the out people, but newsflash, Jesus doesn't care about your comfort. He throws you out of your comfort zone every day in different ways. To tell you the truth, I'm out of my comfort zone right now. Standing in front of you guys scares the crap out of me. But it's what Jesus told me to do. It's what God is telling me to do with the rest of my life, so this is what I'm doing. Jesus came to change everything, to remake the boundaries with total and complete inclusion. It might not be easy at first, but it's what needs to be done. We can't let our made-up rules and sin get in the way of what Jesus came to do, and that's to rid the world of favoritism and oppression. Jesus wants us to make a trade. He wants us to trade all exclusion and judging for love. So we often mistake what Jesus told us to do. Even the people who lived with him back then could mistake what he was telling them. And they figured that he should only preach to the people who were in instead of the people who were out, because they felt that if he was to interact with them, they believed that if you're impure and you touch someone that's pure, that makes them impure. And they wanted to keep Jesus to themselves, and they wanted to keep him pure and healthy, and But no one. So we do that in society today. We have our own church group, and we have our friends at church, and we have our friends at school. But we need to break down the walls and connect them both. You can invite your friends to church. It's allowed. No one has more rights than anyone else. Jesus has time for anyone and everyone. You might be thinking that maybe the problem isn't that you're excluding people. Maybe it's that you're the one being excluded. Maybe even here at Anthem. I know how it feels to be excluded. If you might start feeling that it's okay to judge them back because they judged you, but really all you're doing is alienating yourself more. It's like building a brick wall between the two of you. You're separating them from you, but you're separating yourself from them too. You feel like since you're labeled an outsider, you can judge all the insiders. But that's not what Jesus wants us to do. I'm not saying that it's wrong for you to feel sad or upset or angry that they judged you and alienated you. But, because those feelings are real and they're there for a reason. You need to turn around and take those feelings and you need to trade them for forgiveness and try to include them. A lot of you are thinking, yeah, right, they don't want me, I don't want them. I don't want to include them because they're, yeah. But are you even willing to try? Are you willing to trade what you think you deserve, what you're entitled to see if God's way is better, to see if the way God wants you to live life is better? We need to break down that wall and create, because if you break down that wall and stop blaming them and start seeing what's wrong in yourself, you might be surprised in the relationships you can create with the people who have excluded you or you've excluded. We need to start asking ourselves, who are we trying to be better than? Who are you taking out of your group? Who are you judging? Who have you judged and turned into an object instead of a worthy and valued individual? If we want to take what Mark has written about and start living differently, we need to ask ourselves, what exactly do we have to trade? Are we even willing to make that trade? Are we willing to trade exclusion for inclusion? Are you willing to trade judgment for love? Jesus came to proclaim a message to everyone that he's changing everything, to break oppression and favoritism. He came with a message that everyone is included. He loves everyone. All are welcome and all are worthy. All are his. Let's pray.